Hi everyone. The topic for this week is ethics and morality. As a brief review, the topic for the last class was accountability, and we compared the different views between Friedrich and Feiner. This week, we will see two different views regarding ethics, comparing Kant and utilitarian perspectives. Their main focus is the question of why people behave in a moral manner. Let's look at the view of Immanuel Kant first. His first point is that a good will is good, not because of what it performs or the effect of it, not by its aptness for the attainment of some proposed end, but simply by the virtue of the volition. That is, it is good in itself, and considered by itself is to be esteemed much higher than all that can be brought about by it in favor of any inclination, even of some of a total of all inclinations. This was kind of wordy, but in a simple way of explaining this is that Kant view that the moral ideal is regarded as the production of pure reason. He believed in the good of the people that exists within people, and the good is valuable as it is, not because it brings any good result for people. Okay, let's think about it in this way. He thought morality exists as the good of a people because of because as a formed because it is formed with a pure reason. Kant's second point is that the absolute value of the good is the only basis for a universally binding moral law. He viewed that there is a moral law that applies to everyone around the world. For this, the good only reason is because the existence of the absolute value of the good. We discussed that there is good that exists as a virtue of the volition. In simple terms, good exists because it is good. The will has no value in relation to the effect of produced by it. People follow their moral decision not because of the reason they expect some benefits, but because it is just a good thing to do. Also, nothing can possibly be conceived in the world or even out of it which can be called good without qualification except a good will. All that is given in intuition, all matter of experience, offer no ground for establishing a necessary judgment for a rational being. The desire for happiness is the result of experience, meaning that it could not produce any necessary moral law to be derived. This is an opposite view of arguing that people does a good thing because it makes them happy. People does it because it is the right thing to do, regardless of it brings benefits or benefits or uh, benefits or not. Kant's third point is that uh, there is a self-contradictory nature of the laws themselves. To be specific, when we lie, we do so under the supposition that the law is for men to tell the truth, and and consequently, men will believe that we are doing so. Also, when we steal, we assume that the law of property will generally hold and hold for others. Otherwise, our own act would not be stealing. Let's say this way. Kant believed that there is a universal law for the good and morality. The example is that men tell the truth and property should not be violated, which are universally adopted virtue. If we do not have this type of law, we would not have wrongdoings as well because there are no violation for the universally adopted law. So that's what he refers to self-contradictory. The next point of Kant is that the law is not externally imposed, and the governing principle must come from within people. It means that it must be the reason issuing its commands to itself, which is the noumenal ego asserting its claims over the phenomenal ego. In other words, the form of the law determines the end, and not the ends form the law. Noumenal ego exists within people, and phenomenal ego exists externally in the eyes of the observers. The duty of people is the necessity of acting from respect for the laws that is based on motive based moral value. So let's put it in this way. People follow the moral law that exists within them, and they follow it because they just know what they have to, uh, because they just know that they have to follow the law. Following the law is the reason that they do so, and it is not that they have other benefits out of following the moral law. Okay? So for utilitarian, they had different perspectives regarding morality. So first, they thought the creed, which accepts as the foundation of morals as utility or the greatest happiness principle, holding that actions are right in proportion as they tend to promote happiness and wrong as they tend to produce the reverse of happiness. So, in utilitarian view, people do right things, not because it is a right thing to do, but they do it because it brings happiness. They thought the moral idea is the result of accumulated experiences of pleasure and pain. And from the experience, people found that some actions bring pain and damage utility, and some actions bring pleasure and increase utility. From this view, motor conduct is estimated by the effects of actions, and that the effect, which is the motor criterion, is the greatest happiness of the greatest number. So utilitarian focused on the effect of a motor action in that motor conduct exists because it brings happiness of the greatest number of people from their experience. So in here, the greatest happiness means the greatest access of pleasure over pain, considered in reference either to all sentient beings or to all mankind. And from this view, we know lying and murder are morally bad because of the disadvantage that they bring in the society from the experience of history. The second point of a utilitarian is that pleasure is to be considered abstractly and purely quantitatively. If an act will produce an amount of pleasure equal to 10 in one person, and another act will produce an amount equal to 8 through divide among several persons, the former act would be morally preferable because it gives pleasure to larger numbers of people. This means pleasure can be quantitatively calculable. The question of individuality is to be considered, and one man's pleasure is only quantitatively different from that of another. So, from this view, individual pleasure does not have any meaning unless it is an addition or subtraction to the group's pleasure. And there is a concept called social hedonism, meaning that what matters ethically is the pleasure and pain of the group or society, not the pleasure and pain of an individual. And let's move on to their third point. Utilitarians viewed that the morality of an action depends entirely upon their intention, that is, upon what the agent wills to do. They view that people does not do motor action naturally or because just they know that they have to do. This process involves their will to do so. From utilitarian view, motives have nothing to do in deciding the worth of an action. It is people's decision that motor action produces pleasurable feeling. Utilitarians viewed that motives should be ignored in considering the principles of the moral judgments. All departments of moral life are subordinated to feeling. Morally good that produces pleasurable feeling is known by the accumulated experience of people. In other words, what has been is the only sure guide of what should be. Let's look at their fourth point. Utilitarianism can be categorized into act utilitarianism and rule utilitarianism. Act utilitarianism is choosing behaviors that are useful in producing the greatest happinesses for the greatest number of people. So, for example, people tell the truth is telling the truth produces the best outcome. So let's put it into this way. People telling the people tell the truth because telling the truth produces the best outcome. And people tell a lie if telling a lie produces the greatest happiness of the greatest number of people. Rule utilitarianism is choosing a rule of behaviors that produce the greatest happiness for the greatest number of people. So, from this view, a person can choose a rule that says that telling the truth is the best course of action, and that person will tell the truth in all situations according to that law, because that person believes that telling the truth will result in the greatest happiness for the greatest number of people. So these are two categories of utilitarianism, and for the utilitarian view, most people follow this rule utilitarianism perspectives. So this was the last point that we will cover in this class of morality viewed by utilitarianism. Okay, then let's move on to the summary. Okay, so the topic for this week is about morality. And the main question that the philosophers or the school of philosophy was, where does the morality and moral action of a people people come from? And for Immanuel Kant's view, it came from the virtue that exists within people. So he thought that there is individual and separated the thing that's called uh the that's just for the good of the people, and and based on this, the good of the good that exists within the individual, people follow the moral law. And this moral law is universally binding. And people does the moral actions not because it brings benefits to them. They just do it because it is what they have to do. It is ends of the act. It is the ends that is the reason behind the people's action. It is not the purpose, or it is not the tools to achieve something else. The moral action itself has a moral value, and people just know it because it exists within themselves. And the driver of people's moral action is people's motives. Okay, and this is like a short summary of Immanuel Kant's views on morality. So important takeaway is that he viewed that people does the good thing because as an end, and because they just know that they have to do it. And utilitarian view is quite opposite. So they viewed that moral actions are based on utility, and this utility is can be quantifiable, and people calculate based on whether their action brings happiness to the group or society or pain. So it's a calculation of pleasure over pain. And they their calculation is based on their experience in the past. So this is quite an abstract concept of experience. It does not have to be individual experience. It can be a, historical memory that exists within the society. So from the history, if some actions create pains to the society, people regard it as unmoral things to do. If some actions brought some benefit to the society, people consider the action as a moral action. So it's like accumulated from the experience of the people. So again, the example of like murder or stealing, I mean, in in the short term, it might benefit like some group of people. However, in the long term, people learn that it would risk the societal the order, the safety of the whole society. So they consider those kind of action as unmoral action and avoiding and push the members of the society not to do such actions. So this action of a moral action is based on people's like intention, that whether it is based on their intention to do it or not to do it. So that was also a brief summary of the utilitarian views regarding the morality. So this was it for this week, and we will continue to have a discussion regarding morality by two different perspectives.